Hello everybody, I'm excited about week 2, learning about the gold rush. I've learned a lot of new things and I'm eager to share about what I've learned. Where it all began, James Wilson Marshall comes across a gold pebble while working at a mill site on January 24th, 1848. On December 5th, 1848, President James K. Polk announces the discovery of gold, officially announces it. 1849 is the time period where individuals began to flood the West in hopes of finding gold. And with such great influx and little government regulations, there arose some problems. One of the problems that arose because of the gold rush was the effect on the environment. In the book by Merchant, one of the journals written by Randall Rowe called Mining's Impact on the Land talked about the trees and forests being cut down. Many of them were cut down to create mining tools, buildings, and it was used as fuel. This led to an exhaustion of the wood that caused miners to go to other regions to collect wood, which at times were transported down the rivers. As well, geographically speaking, a lot of mountains were affected as well. Visibility of bedrocks could be seen, as well as deformation. Examples of these regions are the North Bloomfield, Columbia, and Springfield, California. As well, rivers were affected. Their rivers were affected because it altered their water flow. It also caused normal river floods to be greater than their normality, and a lot of the river debris wound up being found on the shores of bays. One of the examples was San Francisco Bay. Also found in the book by Merchant was a journal by E.A. Stevenson called A Federal Agent Assesses Mining Impacts on the Indians. Stevenson talks about how the multitude of miners that began to flood the native lands caused problems in the nature. Uh, it affected the animals. The example given was the salmon that because the debris of the mining that began to fill up the rivers, a lot of salmon began to go to different other regions of the river, and as well a lot of trees, as stated previously, were cut down. This indirectly affected the Indians because as a hunter and gatherer group, they were no longer able to sustain themselves because that was their main source of food, which was salmon and acorn. And Kevin Starr writes in his book California History that hydraulic mining was one of the most devastating forms of mining to the environment. What can we learn from the gold rush? Are there any history lessons in the gold rush story for current California residents? I think a lesson that can be learned is think before you act. If the 49ers would have known the consequences of the misuse and the exhaustion of the environment, I don't think they would have done what they did. Do you believe this was intentional or the product of the time which they lived in? I do not believe that this was an intentional act. And I believe it was because of lack of awareness. And I do believe it was a product of their time. Gold wasn't very common, so the ability to go get gold by mining was obviously something, that was unheard of. And so I think in our time periods, a lot of what we're doing is also the product of our time. We're trying to obviously make this world a better place, but in doing so, I think sometimes we can do things for our own convenience. What might a Christian response to environment responsibility entail in today's world? Genesis 1:28 talks about man being made in the image of God with the purpose of governing all of creation. And I think that was God's original design for us to be responsible with the resources and nature and creation itself. However, with the fall, we began to honor these things more than we did God, and because of that, of the misuse of the environment and resources, because we wanna fill the void that the fall brought about. Um, we end up trying to exhaust these resources, with the end of never being satisfied. And so Romans 8:20, chapter 8, verses 20 to 23 talk about this, that creation itself and believers eagerly await the redemption that Christ will bring on the day he returns. And I think ultimately, as believers, we are responsible of not adding to the misuse of the environment. However, that shouldn't be our goal, to fix the environmental and other problems that are occurring, because our hope is that one day God will restore all things. He will make all things new. I appreciate your guys' time for listening, and I hope each and one of you have a great day.